Hi students, good morning to all. Okay, now we will discuss about 12th standard biozoology subject. The topic chapter number 10, neural control and coordination. The subtopic is reflex action, peripheral neural system and autonomous nervous system. Before already discussed some of the important things for neural control, because the neurons are the basic structure of the nervous system, which conduct the impulse from the sense organ to the brain and the spinal cord. So this is the basic thing. So all the activities occur under the control of the brain and the spinal cord. Why it is a reflex action is needed? So the reflex action is a quick action. It is a short-lived action. So this action is controlled by the spinal cord. When the dust particles falls in our eyes, our eyelids close immediately. Or when the hand touch on hot pan, or it may be pinprick, immediately withdraw our hand without our willingness of our brain or conscious mind. This kind of action is occur very short-lived, not load on the brain, not difficult on the brain. So these are controlled by the spinal cord. So in reflex action, spinal cord it is an important part. The spinal cord remains as a connecting functional nervous structure in between the brain and the effector organs. Spinal cord is located in between the brain and the effector organs. Effector organs. Spinal cord is arise from the head region and ends with the hip. These are well protected by the vertebral column. It's a bony-like structure. So the spinal cord is conduct several nerve pathways from spinal cord to the effector organs. So it is cord-like structure which are present in between the brain and the effector organs. Most of the action is controlled by brain because previous experience or practiced or learning process. But in the case of reflex action, but sometimes very quick response is needed. During that time, the spinal cord motor initiation, effect on motor initiation as the brain. So like the brain, the spinal cord work during the quick response as the brain and bring out the rapid quick action. This rapid quick action done by the spinal cord is called reflex action. Reflex action. So the reflex action is controlled by the spinal cord because it is very quick response to a particular stimulus. So the reflex action or the spontaneous reaction. Spontaneous. It is very fast reaction. It is involuntary action. Involuntary action. It is unplanned sequence. Unplanned sequence. Sequence of particular action. It responds to particular stimulus. Response to particular stimulus. Particular stimulus. So these action are the short-lived. Short-lived action. Okay, I repeat. The reflex action is the activities controlled by the spinal cord. It is a quick response. This quick response is controlled by the spinal cord is called reflex action. So what are the events for the reflex action? It is a spontaneous reaction. So it is a fast reaction. It is a rapid reaction. And it is an involuntary reaction. What is involuntary reaction? It is not controlled by our brain. So that is called as involuntary action. For example, that is a coughing, sneezing, that is involuntary activities. The functioning of the heart is involuntary activities. Next, unplanned sequence. So in general, before going to start any work, we have planned earlier. But this work is not planned. It is unplanned sequence. And another one is respond to particular stimulus. Our body structure is respond. Respond means action to particular stimulus. Where the stimulus is coming from the environment, that is the external stimulus. Our nervous structure are well developed to receive different kind of the external stimuli and convey them to the brain. So again it is a short-lived. It is not loaded up brain. It is a substitute for this brain, that is the spinal cord. Okay, this is the reflex action. What is called the reflex arc? Reflex arc. The new nervous elements for the reflex action are called reflex arc. So what are the anatomical structure or nerve chain structure during the reflex action is called the reflex arc, or it is a pathway for reflex action. Production of reflex action is called the reflex arc. So the reflex arc is anatomical structure. What are the structure which are related to reflex action is called the reflex arc. So what are the difference between the reflex action and reflex arc? Reflex action is a general process, but reflex arc, what is the path, what is the route which convey the information from the external environment to the interior, that is the CNS, or it may be brain and the spinal cord, is called as the reflex arc. So how many structure which are related to the reflex arc? There are 5 structure. One is called a sensory receptors. Sensory receptor, or otherwise called a sensor. The second structure is sensory neuron. Sensory neuron. Sensory neuron, otherwise called the afferent neuron. Afferent neuron. The third structure is interneuron. Interneuron or intermediary neuron. The fourth structure is motor neuron. Motor neuron. Motor neuron, otherwise called efferent neuron. Efferent neuron. And the fifth structure is effector organ. Effector organs. What are the effector organs in our body? Muscles and gland are called effector organs. I repeat, what are the reflex arc? The structure involve the reflex action are called as reflex arc. So one is called a sensory receptor or sense organ. The second one is called sensory neuron, neuron or otherwise called apparent neuron. The third one is interneuron. Fourth one is motor neuron. Motor neuron or efferent neurons. Another one is the last structure is called the effector organ. Okay. What is the sensory receptor or sensor? So already we know in lower classes there are 5 sensors: eye, ear, nose, tongue and the skin. The nervous structure arise from the sense organ are called as sensory receptors. The nervous structure is a specialized structure which are present in the sense organ which receive different kind of external stimuli is called a sensory receptor. Okay, I repeat. A specialized nervous structure located in the sense organ which receive different kind of stimuli from the environment, from outside. So that is in response to a particular stimulus. So what it is present in sense organ? A specialized nerve ending is present. When we touch our body, immediately we feel that sense because of the neuron in touch part immediately receive and send them to our brain because our sense. So that is called a sensory receptor or sense organ. So these structures are located here, various sense organs. What is called a sensory neuron or apparent neuron? Sensory neuron arise from the sense organ. Sensory neuron arise from the sense organ. These are called afferent neuron. Afferent means what? Carrying, going to particular place. This is called as sensory neuron. The neuron or nerve structure arise from the sense organ is called a sensory neuron. Why it is called apparent neuron? It is always going from the sense organ to the sense, CNS or brain. Or it is carrying the information from the sense organ is called a sensory neuron. Or it is otherwise called apparent neuron sensory neuron are arise from the sense organ like skin. So these are arise from the skin and convey the information to the CNS, that is the spinal cord. So this structure, sensory neuron, arise from the sense organ to the CNS. Sensory neuron arise from the sense organ to the CNS. CNS means central nervous system. Central nervous system, it includes two parts. One is brain, another one is spinal cord. Brain, another one is called a spinal cord. So these are sensory neuron or apparent neuron. Next one is interneuron. Where it is located? Interneuron are located in the spinal cord. In general, the spinal cord consists of two parts. One is outer part is called white matter. Inner part is called grey matter. Here, a H-shaped or butterfly-shaped structure present inside the spinal cord is called grey matter because they containing non-myelinated neurons. Based on the presence of the neuron, normally the neurons are two types. One is myelinated, another one is non-myelinated. Myelinated, it is always white in color. That myelinated neuron is present in outside of the spinal cord, hence it is called as white matter. Why it is called white matter? In previous classes already studied. There are two types of the neuron, myelinated neuron, non-myelinated neuron. If the neuron covering the myelin sheath is called myelinated. The myelin sheath are white fatty layer. That myelinated neuron is present in the white matter. Hence the name is called, what is it? White matter. What is grey matter? In the area is consist of non-myelinated, because non-myelinated means what? The neuron not covering the myelin sheath. For example, this is the neuron. This neuron structure, this is called axon. This is the cell body or cyton. Several processes arise from the cyton or cell body are called as dendrites. Dendrites. So these are the structure of the neuron. Here, no myelin sheath present outside of the axon. This is called what? Non-myelinated. Non-myelinated or non-medullated. So this is the non-myelinated neuron, otherwise called a grey neuron. Non-myelinated neuron, otherwise called grey neuron, because they are grey in color. What is myelinated? See here, this is another type of the neuron. Here it is a cell body. Next one is several processes arise from the cell body is called dendrites. This long process, unbranched process is called axon. This axon is covered by myelin sheath. Myelin sheath. Sheath means what? Envelope or covering. So now we can differentiate very easy. This kind of neuron is called non-myelinated because myelin sheath is absent. But here, this kind of neuron, the axon is covered by myelin sheath. This is called as myelinated. Myelinated neurons here. So the myelinated neurons are white in color, non-myelinated are the grey in color. So these are present in different location. Hence, inner part of the spinal cord is grey matter, outer part of the spinal cord is white matter. But in the case of brain, outer part is called grey matter, inner part is called white matter. Okay, just opposite to spinal cord. In our brain, the outer portion is called grey matter, inner part is called white matter. But in the case of spinal cord, outer part is called white matter, inner part is called grey matter. Okay, so what is it? Interneuron. Why it is called as interneuron? This neuron is located in the grey matter of the spinal cord. This part is called grey matter. H-shaped structure is called grey matter. The interneuron or intermediary neuron one part is connected with the sensory neuron, another part is connected with the motor neuron. That is intermediary. Intermediary means what? This neuron is located between the sensory neuron and the motor neuron. Here part is motor neuron, sensory neuron. These are located in the gray matter of the spinal cord. Okay. What is the next neuron? Motor neuron. Motor neuron otherwise called efferent neuron. What is motor? All activities of our body is called motor. All activities is called as motor. Whenever touches, when the hand touches with the hot places, immediately withdraw our hand. This is called action. This is called as action. When we touch is called stimulus, immediately withdraw or move away our hand from the touch part is called action. So the touch is stimulus. Immediately take away our hand from the touch part or it is a hot place is called response. So the response is called motor activities. Motor activities. The motor activities otherwise, the motor neuron otherwise called efferent neuron. Efferent means it is coming. It is coming from. What is meaning of afferent? Afferent means going. Whenever we enter in the classroom is called what? Afferent. When leave out from the classroom is called efferent. So what is the meaning of afferent and efferent? Entering the class is called afferent. Whenever we come out from the classroom is called efferent. Here the motor neuron otherwise called efferent neuron. These are arise from the gray matter of the spinal cord unto to the effector organs. So this organ is called effector organ. Effector organ. So the motor neuron is okay. Motor neuron otherwise called efferent neuron. And the last one is effector organ. What are the effector organs in our body? Muscles and gland. Muscles and gland. Because all activities, that voluntary activities are controlled by the muscles. So whenever we action or activities is occur by the muscles. So directly the effector organs. The effector organs are a specialized structure that include the muscles and the gland, that the action is or effect is takes place. This is called the effect. Action is takes place. Withdraw our hand, close our eyelids. These are activities. So this is controlled by effector organs. So that is the muscles and the glands. So this last structure is effector organs. Okay, this is a very important 5-mark question, 2-mark and 1-mark question. What is the reflex action? What is the reflex arc? What are the components of the reflex arc? How many components involved in reflex action? Which part of our body is controlled the reflex action? That is involuntary, that is spontaneous, that is unplanned, it is a quick reaction. So that is sensory receptor, that are the specialized structure which receive, respond to particular stimulus. Sensory neuron or otherwise called operant neuron, which carry the information from the sense organ to the gray matter of the spinal cord. What is the interneuron? This neuron is located, 1 or 2 neuron is located in the gray matter of the spinal cord. So one end is connected with the sensory neuron, another is connected with the motor neuron. This is the sensory neuron. The sensory neuron outside of the spinal cord which forms dorsal root ganglions. So this side is dorsal side, this side is ventral side. That is the dorsal root, another one is called the ventral root. These are the cell bodies. What is the meaning of ganglion? Ganglion are nothing but a small masses of the cell bodies. It is a ovoid structure. It is a bulge-like structure which containing a mass of the neuron cell body is called ganglia. So these are situated the dorsal side of the spinal cord, hence it is called dorsal root ganglia. Here no ventral root ganglion is formed, but ventral root is present, no ganglion is formed here, only this is the ganglia. Okay, so that is another part, the motor neuron. Next one is called efferent neuron. Motor neuron are arise from the CNS and end with the effector organ. Effector organ. Sense organs, this is called sensory neuron arise from the sense organ, end with the CNS. But motor neuron arise from the CNS, end with the efferent organs. The last one is, that is the effector organs. Sorry, effector organs are the motor organ. Okay. So this is very important. The diagram also is important. So that is no mixing of these two kind of nerves. This is a root for this leg. It is another root. Sensory, another one is called motor neuron. Okay. The next part of this lesson peripheral nervous system. Peripheral neural system. Peripheral neural system. Sorry, before going this, the types of reflex action. Types of reflex action. There are two types of the reflex action. One is unconditioned reflexes. Unconditioned reflexes. The second one is conditioned reflexes. Conditioned reflexes. What are the two types of the reflex activities? One is unconditioned, another one is conditioned reflexes. Unconditioned reflex, otherwise called inborn reflexes. Inborn reflexes, or it is otherwise called inherited reflexes. The conditioned reflexes are the by the past experience, already experience. So what is unconditioned reflex activities? So this kind of action begins from the birth. Hence it is called as inborn reflex activities. Inborn reflex activities. This kind of reflex activities begins from the birth onwards, because our baby is able to cry when the wanting of milk. Hence it is called as inborn reflexes. Inborn reflexes are inherited because this begins from the mothers. So this kind of reflex activities occur. This is no past experience. This is no past experience. It does not any learning process, because naturally it occurs. Hence the unconditioned reflex, otherwise called natural reflex activities. For example, whenever the dust particles enter in our eyes, close immediately. Eyelids are closed immediately. Or it may be the light rays become more from the object, the pupil will be closed. So these are one of the example of unconditioned reflex activities. So whenever that is the coughing or it may be sneezing occur due to the dust particle or foreign particle entering into our nose, or it may be larynx. So these are the example of the unconditioned reflex activities. Unconditioned reflex activities. No previous, no learning process. This begins from this kind of reflex activities. It is continuously, spontaneously occur. So what is conditioned reflexes? The conditioned reflexes are otherwise called learning reflexes. Learning process. Or it may be it occurs by the past experience, practice, learning. For example, swimming, dancing, or it is other activities are called conditioned reflexes. So the excitement of the or stimulation of the salivary glands to stimulate saliva whenever seeing the smell, or it may be food. This is called what is it? Conditioned reflex activities. Because past experience is only learned by experience, or it may be learning activities, is called as conditioned reflex. The conditioned reflexes was first demonstrated or explained by Russian physiologist. Note it. Physiologist. Russian physiologist Ivan Pov. So it is important that The conditioned reflexes, otherwise called classical conditioning, this was first explained by Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov. For this experiment, used that animal is dog. That is because the dog salivation per particular stimulus, that is a meat or it may be bill, through this experiment. The salivation of the dog, the saliva produced by the dog from a stimulus or bill or it may be meat. So this kind of stimulus is called conditioned stimulus. The conditioned stimulus are controlled by cerebral cortex of the brain. Cerebral cortex. Where the cerebral cortex? That is a brain. The outer part of the brain is called the cerebral cortex. The cerebrum or the major portion of the brain which consists of the outer part is called the cortex. Cortex otherwise called the grey matter. So these are controlled. The conditioned reflex are controlled by the brain because the learning process. Why it is the unconditioned reflexes is occur through the spinal cord? Because it is a quick response, very quick response. But it is conditioned reflex, it may be receiving the information and memory that information in our brain. So that is learning process. Dancing, cycling, swimming, singing, this all practice are called as conditioned reflexes. So this first experiment done by Russian physiologist Ivan Pavlov for using dog. That is in response to stimulus. So the cerebral cortex is an important part of our brain which control the memory process. So there are two kind of the reflex activities there. Okay. Now another type of the neural system is peripheral neural system. Peripheral nervous system. So in general there are three types of the nervous system. Central nervous system or CNS, peripheral nervous system or PNS. The third one is autonomic nervous system or ANS. Now we are going to know about the peripheral nervous system. So all the nervous tissue present outside of the nervous tissue present outside of CNS. Nervous tissue present outside of the CNS is called the peripheral nervous system. Peripheral nervous system. CNS means what? It includes two parts. One is brain, another one is spinal cord. One is brain, another one is spinal cord. What are the components of the peripheral nervous system? So the components are the one is nerves. Next one is ganglia. The third one is sensory receptors. And the fourth one is enteric flexus. Okay. What are the components of the peripheral nervous system? One is nerves, ganglia, sensory receptor and enteric flexus. What is called nerves? Nerves are a cord-like structure. This is called as nerves. This part is called the cell body, axon. Cell body, next axon. So this part of the neurons. What is a nerves? A cord-like structure. It consists of several neurons. Located inside. This is called as nerves. These nerves which conduct the impulses from one place to other place. What is called the ganglion? A small masses of cell body, or it may be nervous tissue. Particularly it consists of neurons of the cell body. Listen here. This is called as ganglion. Ganglion is the singular, ganglia is the plural. It consists of mostly that is cell body. This is the cell body of the neuron. Cell body, axon. The cell body, next one is axon. Axon is a cell body. Cell body, next one is axon. This is called as ganglion. What is sensory receptor? Already I told you. Sensory receptor are nothing but a specialized structure of the sensor. Specialized nerve structure of the sensor is called sensory receptor. Receptor are the specialized sensory nerve cells. What is entry flexes? Entry flexes. Entry flexes are nothing but a network of the nerve fibers. A mesh-like or network of the nerve fibers is present in the gastrointestinal tract, wall of the gastrointestinal tract. Using here, in gastrointestinal tract, it may be several layers. Serosa, it is outermost layer. Next one is called muscularis. This layer is serosa. Next one is called muscularis. This another layer is called submucosa. Submucosa. So in the wall of the structure, next one is called mucosa. This structure is called mucosa. The wall of gastrointestinal tract means what? Small intestine, large intestine. This part or stomach. This part is covered by the 5 layers or 4 layers. Outer, next one is muscularis, submucosa. In this structure, these entry flexes are located just, it is a mesh-like structure. It is an extension of the network of neurons. Network of the neurons are mesh-like structure. Mesh-like structure. Plexus means what? It is a branches. Branches is located in the gastrointestinal tract. What are the organ of gastrointestinal tract? From the esophagus to the anus. That is stomach and small intestine. This what is the role of entry plexus or the network of the nerve fibers, particularly which involve the digestive system, the secretion of digestive juices and helps in the digestion. Okay, so these are the 4 important structure of the components of the peripheral nervous system. So what are the other nerves arise from, major nerves arise from this peripheral nervous system? Mostly it is outside of the brain under the spinal cord. There are 2 kinds of the peripheral nerves. One is cranial nerves, another one is spinal nerves. Cranial nerves, next one is spinal nerves. Is important, listen here. Cranial nerves are arise from the brain. Spinal nerves are arise from the spinal cord. It is simple. It is a spinal nerve, easy to identify. What is cranium? Cranium means what? Brain. The brain is covered by the skull or cranium. The nerves arising from the brain is called cranial nerves. There are 12 pairs of the cranial nerves. Note it. How many pairs of cranial nerves? 12 pairs. How many spinal nerves? 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. So out of the 12 pairs of cranial nerves, the vagus nerve is the longest nerve. Other than the vagus nerves, the remaining nerves are enter into the abdominal regions of our body. Abdominal regions of our body. So out of 12 pairs of cranial nerves, the first 2 pairs, that is 1 and 2, are arise from the forebrain. Note it, one more question. Out of 12 pairs, the first 2 pairs are arise from the forebrain. The remaining 10 pairs of the cranial nerves are arise from midbrain. So the vagus nerve is the important part. It is several branches. So the vagus nerves are connected with the lungs and the heart. Control the activities of the heart function and the lungs. So remaining nerves are maximum is present in the head and the face. Okay, this is the cranial nerves. What is called the spinal nerves? All spinal nerves are arise from the spinal cord. 31 pairs of the spinal cord. The spinal nerves are arise from the intervertebral foramen. Listen here. This is the bone of vertebral column. Bone of the vertebral column. It is another bone of the vertebral column. Another bone of the vertebral column. It is another disc is found here. Okay, these are the vertebral body. vertebral body, because the spinal cord is protected by the vertebral column. Here it is called a intervertebral disc. The structure is called intervertebral disc. What is intervertebral disc? A place between the two vertebral bone is called the intervertebral disc. Okay, here a small space is present. The small space is present between the one vertebral bone to another vertebral bone or vertebra is called intervertebral foramen or foramina. Intervertebral foramina is open because this process is called the spinal process. Because the spinal cord enter. So the nerves are arise from the intervertebral disc. This is spinal nerves. Spinal nerves. Okay, I repeat. What is intervertebral foramen? A space between the two vertebra where the spinal nerves arises is called intervertebral foramen. A space between closely attached with the cartilage is called intervertebral disc. Intervertebral disc. Okay, 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. So this symbol formula is C8, T12, L5, S5, C1. What is C means? Cervical. Cervical means what? Neck. Neck. How many pairs are present? There are 8 pairs. There are 8 pairs. What is T means? Thoracic. Which part of our body is thoracic? Chest region is thoracic. In thoracic, how many pairs of spinal nerves are there? There are 12 pairs of spinal nerves. What is L means? Lumbar. Lumbar means what? Abdomen. Below the thoracic is called abdomen. The nerves which are present in the abdominal region is the lumbar. So that is just above the hip region. The lumbar have 5 pairs. 5 pairs of spinal nerves. What is S means? Sacrum. It is a hip region. The hip part of our body is called a sacrum. Sacrum is located below the lumbar. It has 5 pairs. What is the last one is called C, another C. Don't confuse. The first C is called cervical. The last C means coccyx. C-O, C is coccygeal. It is a tail of our vertebral column is 1 pair. So totally how many pairs are present? There are 31 pairs of the spinal nerves. Okay, 31 pairs of the spinal nerves are present. These are arise from the spinal cord. So this is an important formula. Note it. That is C8, T12, L5, S5 and another one is C1. Okay. So okay students. So this part is I think it is very useful to you. So watch this video. Don't miss it. Don't forget. So this is very important part. This lesson. And so many questions will ask from this area. So thank you for your cooperation.